Good evening to everybody. Hi. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So, how does saying yes change our lives? This is something really, really important. Everybody wants to know uh, what does it mean, really. But we actually know that for many reasons, when we suffer, we tend to close into ourselves. We tend to stop really interacting. We tend to really live in a reality without noticing that anything new. It's all the same reality. And when we suffer, actually, what is really happening? If you have attended my previous live webinar, you already know that. So every human being has needs. If these needs, emotional needs, are not really met, they can create, not really recognized and met by the significant others, they can create inside of us what schema therapy calls schemas. And then the schemas that are like internal clusters of or internal networks of neurons that are kind of let's say softwares, internal softwares in our brain. They when they are created, they tend to really um, be activated very easily, and then when they are activated, we are fulfilled of very strong emotions. And then we tend to try to protect ourselves, learning new coping strategies. And usually these coping strategies are good in the very early moment, but then they become very negative and and they create very negative consequences in our life. So instead of really helping us to go through the problem, they tend to reinforce the schemas, and then they tend to reinforce our problems. So our brain and our personality tends to develop in a way that is really affected by these schemas and by the very early experiences that we do in our life. So we're going to talk more about that. So as I was saying, we have these emotional needs. Which are these needs? The needs for safety, love, autonomy, freedom of expression, and connection. So when these needs are met, our mind, our personality, our brain is really built up around trust. So we trust others, we trust the world, we trust ourselves. When they are not recognized, accepted, welcomed, and met, fulfilled, really the mind builds around fear, usually, around anxiety and fear. And when the when this happens, as I was saying, we develop what Jeffrey Young called maladaptive schemas. But obviously, if they are recognized and met, we can develop adaptive schemas. So these adaptive schemas help us to live a very balanced life. So we can really approach anything in our life, everything in our life in a very effective and positive way. And we can recover to any negative issue that we can or challenge that we encounter in our life. So the schema is not an idea. In every webinar, if you go through all my webinars, previous webinars, I really suggest you to really watch all of them. I try to describe schemas in every webinar in a different way, trying to use metaphors, trying to really help you to deeply understand what schemas are. So in this case, what I'm saying is they are not just an idea, they're not just a thought, they are emotional conclusion that the brain draws to make sense of a pain related to the unmet needs. So uh, let's say that my needs are not really recognized and met when I'm really little, and that I experience very negative situations. I could develop a schema that could really uh, push me to think the world is unsafe, or I am unlovable, or my needs don't really matter to anyone. So these beliefs are, they're not just beliefs. At the beginning, they are emotional sensations. They are feelings. The child feels these things even before that the language is developed. The episodic memory is developed. So there are not really images connected to those schemas many times when they are very early maladaptive schemas. So it's something that we feel. Then slowly, when we grow up, we tend to explain things that happen to us using words. So we can say things as I was saying to you, I'm unlovable, I don't deserve things, or I'm a failure, there's something really wrong with me, and things like this. Or everybody are going to make me something bad. So we can develop this, we can create these thoughts in our mind. When the schemas are created, they really push us to really watch the reality in a way that really is related to the early experiences that created those schemas. So if those experiences were experiences in which the love I was abandoned, or the love was not consistent, or the love was not predictable, well, the love that I was receiving was not predictable, then I would tend to anticipate that and notice in the reality every detail that will give me the information that that thing that I'm anticipating is really happening. So I will tend to see, or that I will tend to perceive that people are inconsistent. I will tend to choose people that are not there for me all the time, consistently, and and so I will reinforce that vision in my life, that perception in my life, those schemas in my life. If my perception, if the experiences at the beginning were experiences in which I was abused, then I could really live in a reality that is dangerous, that is threatening in terms of abuse, or that is a reality that is not trustable, really. So um, when we develop these schemas usually um, are really accompanied by very strong emotions. And when they are active, it's very difficult, especially with some of them, it's very difficult to switch them off. So we tend to be flooded by very strong emotions. And what we try to do is to really manage those schemas, the activation of those schemas, or even the emotions, in order to try to prevent that, or in order to reduce those emotional those negative emotions. So when we are children, we firstly suffer, and then we learn to do certain things. We learn, our brain develops strategies to cope with these emotions, and these strategies are survival strategies. So they really need, and we need these strategies in order to survive emotionally. So it's very, very difficult for a child that is very little to survive emotionally to certain experiences. So you see the child experiences very negative situations, developing strategies, is already shaping his brain in a specific way. So a way that is going to be always reinforced and really strengthened. And so the more goes in a certain direction, this development, the more the child tends to see the world in a specific way, and so the teenager and so the adult. So these schemas will keep reinforcing themselves through the use of certain coping modes and through the distortions, also cognitive distortions, and all the dynamics that are created relationally in the life of the person. So these coping strategies become so present that will become like a part of our personality. So we can see that there's a part of our personality that is really busy to try to help us to survive, but using strategies that are very negative, because all these strategies have consequences, as we are going to see to see now. So what kind of coping strategies usually we have? We have the avoidance. So we try to escape from emotion and also situations, contact. Then we have surrendering. So we try to comply and losing oneself to preserve attachment. So we try to really adjust to the schema and to what the schema is really making us feel in order to keep their relationship going. And then the overcompensation. So we tend to fight against the schemas, trying to do the opposite, trying to controlling the world around, try to uh, perform and really try to not feel vulnerable and not feel what was very painful at the originally in the childhood. Maybe making others feeling what we don't want to feel. We can use all these strategies in different situations, but some of us, depending on also on specific characteristics, tends to use maybe one or two more, and they become kind of styles, coping styles. So we see that some people tend to avoid more, some other people tend to be very overcompensating, and so we go back to the topic of the event, and we want to see how we tend to say no to life, no to our experience, not to change, not to the richness of reality. So through the coping of avoidance, we could say no, being in silence or withdrawing or being numb, and saying, if I don't feel, I won't suffer. So this could be the thought behind that. And avoiding the pain, we also avoid feeling positive emotions, feeling love, feeling intimacy, and we really avoid life. And so we tend to really sleep on reality, sleep with our perception on things, assuming that everything is always the same. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you walk in your life during the day and you don't notice things? You are really self-absorbed, you are closing to yourself, and you are not even curious about reality. Reality is always the same thing, and you tend to really close up to life, and that is already a big no to life. So typical signs of this avoidance is not responding, or we can intellectualize even these events or the ebooks that we have. For some of you could be an attempt to intellectualizing, so tends to be more rational, not very in touch with emotions, try to be distant to what is painful, perceived as painful. Imagine that you have like a box inside of you with full of emotions. There are negative emotions and positive emotions. The box is always the same. If you open to the negative, you could um, you could have also the positive coming out in some specific moments. But if you don't really want to feel the negative emotions, you are going to condemn yourself, or this part of you is really going to condemn yourself to not feeling also the positive emotions. And this is something understandable. I mean, so many clients of mine use the avoidance as a strategy. It's we all use avoidance, but when it's something really rigid and generalized, that this could be a very big problem. And sometimes the body could also freeze, and the heart stop really speaking, giving us informations. When we avoid emotions, negative feelings, it doesn't mean that specific areas of our brain are not really activated. They are activated, and uh, actually our brain is still feeling the emotions, is still really processing emotions, but we don't perceive those emotions, and we cannot really take care of them. We cannot really understand what is making us feeling miserable or pain. And so, if we had a pain in our heart, in our arm, and we don't feel it, we cannot really take care of the what is causing that pain, or why we are feeling that pain. So the cognitive distortions related to avoidance could be, it's not that important, I'll deal with it later, no one would understand. These are not really lies, but they are things that we can perceive and think in order to make us feel even calmer, and help us to really take the distance between us and the emotions, and to give an explanation to us in order not to really even try to go to keep in touch with the emotions. So